This happened about a week ago. I'm 32, and I decided to take a month off work to backpack the Appalachian Trail. I've camped before, but this was my first time on such a long hike. I wanted to connect with nature and maybe find a piece of myself out here. I set up camp on my second night near one of the shelters. The forest was quiet, just me and the trees. It felt peaceful, and I thought maybe this was the escape I needed. But I've never stopped thinking about what happened next. Around midnight I woke up. Something was tapping outside my tent. I thought it was just branches, the wind maybe. I felt a chill run down my spine. I listened harder. The tapping wasn't random. It had a rhythm, steady and methodical. My heart started racing, but I tried to calm myself. I lay still for a few moments. Was it just my imagination? I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The next morning, I met a couple of hikers at the shelter. They looked tired. One of them mentioned hearing strange sounds the night before. They described whispers carried by the wind. I felt a knot in my stomach as they spoke. It was like someone was calling us, they said. I thought about the tapping and felt a strange mix of fear and curiosity. Maybe it was just the stress of hiking, I told myself. As the days passed, things got weirder. I heard that tapping again, but it seemed louder. Some moments it changed to whispers. I thought I was losing it. Faces appeared in my mind, shadows flitting between the trees. I'd look up but see nothing. I was jumping at every sound. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I was setting up my camp when I saw a figure in the distance. It stood still like it was watching me. I squinted, tried to make sense of it. I called out, "Hey, you okay?" No answer. As I took a step closer, it vanished behind a tree. My heart raced, and I felt cold. I turned back to my camp, nervous. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was out there, lingering just beyond my sight. Then as I lay awake that night, I heard the tapping again. It was closer this time. My heart pounded. I thought of the couple's whispers. I whispered, "Who's there?" Suddenly the tapping stopped. Silence filled the air. I shook, unable to scream or move. Then I heard a voice, soft, almost pleading. It said, "Come find me." I jumped to my feet, heart racing. I looked outside my tent, and that same figure stood there, staring into my soul. I blinked, and it was gone. Just trees. But I could still feel its gaze. I spent the next day trying to shake off the night's events. I packed my things and decided to hike further down the trail, hoping to put some distance between myself and whatever I had experienced. The trail wound through thick trees and steep hills, and with each step, I thought about turning back. I couldn't help but feel that I was drawing closer to something I didn't understand. As the sun climbed higher, I met another hiker, a man with a scruffy beard and a weary smile. We chatted for a while, and I felt my nerves start to ease. He seemed friendly enough, sharing stories of his own adventures on the trail. But when I asked about any strange experiences, his expression changed. "Strange sounds? Shadows?" he said, looking off into the trees. "You're not alone in thinking that way." I felt uneasy. I pressed him for details, but he just shrugged, muttering something about the woods being alive. I laughed it off, but inside I was still tense. I hurriedly excused myself and moved on. I needed to find a place to camp again, to feel secure, but the idea of a restless night filled me with dread. That night I set up camp far from where I had heard the tapping and the voice. I picked a spot near a bubbling creek, thinking the sound would drown out any noise that might creep in. As darkness settled in, I felt a bit more at ease, but sleep was elusive. Just as I began to drift off, I heard it again, a faint tapping. My heart sank. It brought back everything I'd been trying to escape. I clenched my fists, willing it to go away. The tapping continued, rhythmic and insistent. Then, much to my horror, a whisper rose above the sound. "Come find me," it beckoned, just like before. This time it felt different. The voice was colder, a harsh echo that made my skin crawl. I sat up in my sleeping bag, terrified. I didn't want to look outside. I wanted to scream but found my voice trapped in my throat. I told myself it was just the wind, just my imagination. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched again. Suddenly I saw movement near the tree line. I strained my eyes in the darkness, and there it was. The figure. It stood silently, barely visible, cloaked in shadows. I felt paralyzed. I wanted to run, but part of me was rooted in place, drawn to the figure. Before I could react, it turned and vanished deeper into the woods. My breath quickened as I felt the panic clutching at my chest. I had to know what it was. With my heart pounding, I unzipped my tent and stepped outside. The cool air hit me, sharp and biting. The night was mercifully quiet now, aside from the distant churning of the creek. I glanced around, my eyes searching the darkness. "Hello?" I called tentatively, my voice shaky. "Is anyone there?" Just then something caught my eye. A glimmer near the spot where the figure had stood. I walked over, trembling, and that's when I saw it. Something shiny lay half buried in the dirt, reflecting the moonlight. I crouched down to pick it up, and my heart sank further. It was a locket, old and tarnished, but it felt heavy in my hand as if it carried a weight I could not understand. That's when I heard the whisper again, this time right beside me. "Come find me." The hairs on my neck stood up, and I realized that I was no longer alone. I whipped around, heart racing, but there was nothing there. Just darkness and trees, their branches swaying gently in the night breeze. The whisper echoed in my ears, chilling and persistent. I could feel a cold sweat forming on my brow. I gripped the locket tightly, its weight grounding me, but also making the fear swell inside me. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice trembling. "What do you want?" Silence stretched, thick and suffocating. I debated retreating back into the safety of my tent, but a bizarre mixture of curiosity and dread propelled me forward. Maybe the figure could give me answers. I had to know if it was just a figment of my imagination or something more sinister lurking in the shadows. I started to move deeper into the forest, drawn inexplicably to where the figure had vanished. The moon cast an eerie glow, illuminating the twisted branches and fallen leaves. I felt a chill creep down my spine as the trees loomed closer, their shapes distorting in the fading light. Each step felt like a step toward the unknown. After a few minutes, I spotted something faint between the trees, a soft light flickering like a candle. Hope surged within me, pushing aside the fear, and I hurried towards it. With each footfall, I repeated the question in my mind. What was waiting for me? As I moved closer, the light brightened, revealing a clearing adorned with stones, some engraved with names, others adorned with flowers. It was a small shrine. My heart sank as I took it all in. I realized the names were those of hikers who had gone missing over the years, their names carved into the stone. The realization hit me hard. These weren't just tributes, they were reminders of what could happen here. I glanced around, feeling the dread resurface. The words of the scruffy man echoed in my mind. The woods are alive. What if they held the spirits of those lost? What if the voice I heard was one of them, trying to connect from beyond the veil? Before I could process my thoughts, I felt a cool breeze brush against my skin, and the candles flickered violently, then extinguished, plunging the clearing into darkness. Panic gripped me. I whipped around to return to the trail, but the sense of direction had vanished. I was surrounded by shadows, and it felt like the trees were closing in on me. I stumbled backward, heart racing, and that's when I heard it again. The whisper, louder this time, as if carried on the wind. "Come find me." "Who are you?" I shouted, my voice cracking. With those words, the locket in my hand grew unbearably hot, almost burning. I dropped it onto the forest floor, stunned. I had to get out. I turned and ran, branches snagging at my clothes as I pushed through the underbrush. Then the ground shifted beneath my feet. I lost my footing and fell forward, landing hard on the ground. As I lay there, breathless, I heard footsteps approaching. I wasn't alone anymore. I struggled to get to my feet, my heart pounding in my chest. I glanced around, adrenaline coursing through me, trying to locate the source of the footsteps. It sounded like they were getting closer, a slow and deliberate pace that sent a shiver down my spine. "Hello?" I called out, my voice barely a whisper. The darkness swallowed my words, stretching the silence thicker. Then I saw it, a shadow moving among the trees just at the edge of my vision. My breath hitched as the figure stepped into the faint light spilling from the abandoned shrine. It was tall, almost impossibly so, wrapped in a tattered cloak that fluttered around it like smoke. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice shaky but firm. The figure didn't answer. It just tilted its head, as if studying me. I took a cautious step back, the branches cracking under my weight. The figure seemed to sense my fear. It raised a hand, beckoning me forward with a slow, deliberate motion. A chill erupted from my spine to my fingertips. All I wanted was to run, but something held me. I felt drawn to it like a moth to a flame. "Come find me," it repeated, though this time the voice was clearer. I felt it resonate inside me, vibrating through my chest. It was no longer just a whisper carried by the wind. It was an invitation, enticing yet frightening. I hesitated, my instincts warning me to retreat, but I couldn't shake the desire to understand what this entity wanted. I grit my teeth and stepped closer, careful not to take my eyes off it. Each stride felt cumbersome, as if the forest was trying to root me in place. "Why are you here?" I demanded, trying to sound braver than I felt. The figure pointed past me toward the shrine, then nodded slowly. I felt my pulse quicken. What did it want me to see? I turned around, uncertainty creeping back in as I peered at the stones. One name caught my eye, Lily Thompson. I recognized it from a missing person flyer I had seen a few days earlier. Before I could process that disturbing connection, the clearing suddenly shook with a low, growling sound. My heart practically stopped. The figure vanished into the shadows, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts and a growing sense of dread. Then I heard it again. Heavy footsteps, this time coming from two different directions. My pulse raced even faster. There were more than one. I glanced back at the shrine, my mind racing with questions. What was happening? Were there more spirits bound to these woods? I didn't give myself a chance to think any longer. I swiftly turned, looking for any path out of the clearing. The growling grew louder, almost urgent. I stumbled into the underbrush, branches clawing at me, desperate to slow me down. That's when I spotted it. A narrow trail leading deeper into the darkness. I didn't stop to consider if it was safe, or if it would lead me further into danger. I took a breath, squared my shoulders, and ran. The darkness swallowed me whole, and the sounds of the forest erupted around me. I had to find safety, but I also needed to uncover the truth about these woods and the shadows that lingered within. And then I heard the voice again. "Come find me." This time I had no choice but to follow. The trail twisted in front of me, almost serpentine, as if it were alive and aware of my every step. The darkness felt oppressive, like it was trying to close in around me. I stumbled over roots and stones, the branches reaching out like long fingers. Each crack of a twig sent shockwaves of fear through me. Suddenly a soft whisper broke through the rustling leaves. "Come find me." It was closer now, unmistakably more urgent. I pushed myself to run faster, the ground uneven beneath my feet. My thoughts raced as I focused on the voice instead of the shadows that danced at the periphery of my vision. Ahead I spotted what looked like a faint glow. I squinted, thinking it might be my only chance at safety. As I got closer, I realized it was the flickering of candlelight, illuminating another clearing. My heart skipped a beat. Was this a place of refuge or another trap? I hesitated, weighing my options. But the growling in the distance reminded me time was running out. I stepped into the clearing, and what I saw froze me in place. A circle of candles surrounded an old gnarled tree. There were offerings laid out around the base, wilted flowers, rusted trinkets, and even a pair of worn shoes that sent chills down my spine. The smell of decay hung like a thick fog in the air. Then I saw it. A figure, hunched and slight, stood in front of the tree, its back turned to me. It wore shabby clothes, patched and torn, and I could see wisps of hair sticking out beneath the hood. My mind raced. Was this company or another threat? "Help!" I wanted to shout, but the words evaporated in my throat. Instead, I stepped forward, cautious. "Are you okay?" The figure turned slowly. I glimpsed a face obscured in shadow. Dark eyes gleamed with a haunted look. The person's mouth moved, but all I heard was a low, rasping sound that set my teeth on edge. Before I could comprehend what I was seeing, the figure raised a hand, pointing directly to the tree. The ground beneath it shifted, revealing something shimmering in the candlelight. I took a step closer. "What is it?" I asked, my voice barely louder than a whisper. As I moved, the growling returned, more furious and close, echoing off the trees and bouncing around the clearing. The figure's expression twisted in fear. "Get out!" it rasped, the urgency now palpable. I turned to run, but curiosity gripped me. What had I come this far to find? I glanced back at the shimmering light. Fear clawed at me, battling the need to understand. Then everything shifted. A rustle in the bushes made me jump. My instincts screamed to go, but the figure in the tree held me captive. When I finally tore my gaze away, the shadows had come alive. I bolted, adrenaline pumping through my veins, the growls now right behind me. I dashed down a different path, knowing I could not look back. But that voice echoed in my mind. "Come find me." Something within me knew I was closer to the truth than ever before. What I had uncovered was only the beginning. The trees closed in around me as I ran, their branches clawing at my clothes. I didn't care where I was going, only that I was getting away from that clearing. The growls were relentless, a primal sound that made my skin crawl. I could feel the presence behind me, something hungry and eager to catch me. I picked up speed, my breath coming in harsh gasps. After what felt like an eternity, I stumbled into a narrow path that seemed to lead away from the chaos. The growling faded, but doubt lingered. Was this a safe route or just another dead end? I glanced back over my shoulder. I could see nothing. The shadows had swallowed whatever was chasing me. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still being watched. I pressed on, fighting against the instinct to stop and breathe. The deeper I ventured, the thicker the underbrush became, almost suffocating. Old memories pulled at me, fragments of stories about the woods and their secrets, not all of them good. A sudden rustle in the leaves froze me in my tracks. It could have been a deer or some other animal, but I didn't linger to find out. I ducked behind a large tree, heart racing, listening. Then I heard it, the whisper again. "Come find me." The voice was clear now, weaving through the trees, taunting, almost musical. I couldn't tell if it was my imagination or something real in the darkness. I shook my head, trying to banish the sound, but it lingered, curling around my mind like a fog. When I finally dared to peek, I couldn't see anything out of the ordinary. Anger mixed with fear bubbled in my chest. I had come this far. But why? For a voice that could just as easily lead me to my doom as to the truth? I took a step away from my hiding spot and moved forward cautiously. The pull of that ache in my chest was strong, and I couldn't ignore it. I had to know what was out there. I had to find the source of that voice. As I ventured deeper into the thicket, the atmosphere shifted. Greener, fresher, yet tinged with something unsettling. I pressed on, determined despite the gnawing sense of dread. A part of me was screaming to turn back, but another urged me forward, chasing the whisper that seemed to echo in every direction. Then I stumbled upon something unexpected. There, half buried in the underbrush, was an old map. Its edges were frayed and the ink had faded in patches, but I could make out a trail marked with a series of strange symbols. My pulse quickened. What did it mean? I knelt down to inspect it, and as I brushed away the dirt, I noticed something carved into the wood of a nearby tree. Symbols that matched those on the map. This was no coincidence. I felt a connection pulling me closer, as if they were beckoning me to decipher the secrets they guarded. At that moment, the ground trembled slightly beneath me, a warning. Panic surged through me again. I scrambled to my feet and clutched the map tight. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever I'd stumbled onto was much bigger than I ever anticipated. And that's when I heard it again. A voice, firm this time, now echoing like thunder. "Leave this place." My heart raced. I didn't know who or what was behind me, but I was sure it was angry. I took off running once more, the forest closing in around me, determined to escape whatever dark reality I had unearthed. The ground thumped beneath me with each frantic step as I sprinted deeper into the forest. The voice still echoed in my ears, but charged with something darker now. I could feel the air thickening, like the atmosphere before a storm, electric and oppressive. My mind raced with questions. What was this place? Who had spoken to me and why? As I ran, I glanced at the map still clenched in my hands. Maybe it held the answers. I turned a corner where the trees parted slightly, giving me a momentary reprieve. I pulled it out, studying the drawn path. The symbols were strange, but it also showed a location. A small circle marked with an X far deeper in the woods. I had to find it. Something inside me urged me to keep going, that I would discover what I needed. But then my heart sank as a chill settled over the clearing. Something shifted in the brush nearby. I froze, every nerve ending screaming at me to move. Not again, I whispered to myself. Anxiety gripped me as I turned my focus on that rustle. I held my breath, straining to locate the source. Suddenly something lunged from the shadows. It was a dog, wild and gaunt, its fur dirty and matted. It stopped a yard away, yellow eyes boring into mine. I felt both relief and apprehension. What was a dog doing here all alone? It hadn't bit or growled, but it didn't seem friendly either. I could see its ribs through the skin, a reminder of potential danger hiding behind its gaunt frame. Then it moved closer, and I instinctively took a step back. The dog's hair bristled, but it whined softly, tilting its head as if assessing me. "Hey, easy there," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But something in its gaze made my gut twist. I felt it was more attuned to this place than I was, like it understood the dark secrets hidden among the trees. The moment lingered too long. Without warning, the growling returned in the distance, fiercer now and echoing all around me. My skin prickled, aware that whatever was behind us was getting closer. I had to act. I threw caution to the wind and began to move again, trying not to provoke the dog further. It hesitated only for a heartbeat before following, as if not wanting to be left alone in the woods. I could feel the ground rumble again, and the trees shook slightly as the growls intensified. It wasn't just one threat. There were multiple sounds now, closing in. I shoved the map back into my pocket and sprinted out of the clearing, trusting my instincts to lead me away from danger. The dog mirrored my urgency, bolting alongside me. Then a flash of movement caught my eye. I turned just in time to see a shape dart between the trees, low to the ground, something big. No longer just a rustle or a growl. This thing was a tangible presence that made the air feel heavier. I could taste fear in my mouth. "Please not now," I muttered, cursing myself for getting into this. Out of the corner of my eye I saw the symbols again, carved into yet another tree. The dog paused, seeming drawn to it, tail twitching. I wouldn't stop, but could it know something I didn't? Then everything went dark as the growling crescendoed into a roar. I stumbled, my pulse racing, and I stumbled backward against the massive tree. The bark scraped my skin, but I barely noticed. I blinked against the shadows closing in, my heart thrumming as the silhouettes began to emerge from the depths of the thicket. This wasn't just a pursuit anymore. It was a confrontation waiting to happen. The shadows unfurled, revealing shapes that loomed larger than I'd dared imagine. My breath quickened, urgency flooding my veins. I had to keep moving, had to escape whatever haunted those woods. But panic threatened to root me to the spot. The growling escalated, a deep, bone-chilling sound that rattled through me. I turned and sprinted, the dog at my side, as the trees became a blur of trunks and leaves. Fear propelled me forward, but I felt that presence hot on my trail, a dark storm brewing behind me, gathering strength. Then I spotted it, the small circle marked with an X on the map. It was a clearing, barely visible through the chaos of branches. I pushed my way through and stumbled into the sunlight, grateful for the brief respite. My heart still raced like I'd run a marathon, and I paused just long enough to gasp for air. The clearing was strange, unlike the rest of the forest. The grass was unusually vibrant, almost glowing. My gaze flicked around. I felt watched, like hidden eyes peered from behind every tree. The dog hesitated, its tail tucked as it sniffed the air. Then I heard it, a whisper. Not the voice from earlier, but something distant, soft and incomprehensible. It ebbed and flowed like a forgotten song. I spun, looking for the source. My instincts screamed for me to leave, but a different part of me wanted to stay, to understand. That was when I saw it. A stone altar stood in the middle of the clearing, rough-hewn yet oddly shaped, marking it as a focal point of ancient importance. Symbols, familiar yet foreign, ran across its surface, similar to the ones I had found on the trees. My curiosity fought with terror, pulling me closer. As I approached, I felt an electric charge in the air, the very atmosphere vibrating with urgency. The whispers grew sharper, a chaotic blend of languages that melded into an unintelligible yet haunting melody. I could feel it pulling me, calling me closer. Suddenly the dog growled softly beside me, snapping me out of the trance. I glanced down, startled. It stared furiously into the trees. Something was there, lurking just beyond the edge of the clearing. "Stay back," I whispered to the dog, but it bristled, ready to protect. I could see the fear mirrored in its eyes, a reflection of my own dread. Then the growling returned, louder than before, and it was not just coming from the shadows. It was coming from everywhere, reverberating through the very ground beneath me. Panic surged through my body as I realized I had become trapped between the altar, the forest, and whatever dark thing was closing in. The dog barked, snapping me back to reality. I needed to decide. Did I delve into the mystery of the altar, or did I try to flee before whatever was hunting me emerged? As I weighed my options, a figure slipped out from the tree line, a vague silhouette that sent my heart racing anew. I had to act fast. There was no time for hesitation. Whatever I chose would lead me deeper into the unknown. I took a step back, my instincts screaming for me to run. The silhouette shifted, a darkness contrasting against the dappled sunlight. It was a figure, but not fully formed, like a shadow refusing to take on substance. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice wavering. The dog growled again, low and steady, standing protective. The figure didn't answer, just stood there, as if waiting for me to make the first move. My heart hammered in my chest. In the split second of silence, I felt the pressure from the forest tightening around me. I glanced at the altar, wondering if it held some secret, some way to understand what was happening. But before I could make a decision, the figure moved, stepping into the clearing with an eerie grace. It wasn't human. The limbs seemed longer, the body too thin, and the eyes— there were no eyes, just empty sockets deep and profound. The whispers intensified, swirling around me like a tempest. They were attempting to form something, but the words eluded me, dancing just beyond comprehension. "Get back," I yelled, grabbing the dog's collar. But the creature didn't advance. Instead, it tilted its head, as if studying me with curiosity. My breath hitched in my throat. Then something unexpected happened. The ground trembled lightly beneath my feet and the grass began to ripple, swirling around the altar like a tide. I could hardly believe my eyes. A sense of ancient power surged through the air. It was intoxicating and terrifying. "Run!" I told the dog, though part of me felt rooted in place. The energy was magnetic, a pull that made me feel alive yet fearful. The creature remained still, but the growling grew louder, echoing from deeper in the forest, as if answering a call. My mind raced. I could either flee into the unknown or investigate this otherworldly being that held me captive. But as I weighed my choices, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. Movement at the edge of the clearing. A second figure emerged, equally shadowy, mirroring the first. My heart sank. I was surrounded. Whatever was in the woods had sent more than one to confront me. Panic surged anew. I wanted to shout for help, but my throat felt locked. Then an unexpected sound pierced through the chaos. a sharp cracking noise like a branch snapping underfoot. Instinctively, I turned to see where it had come from, and my heart dropped. A third shape had ventured into view, this one larger and even more grotesque than the others. It lumbered toward me, breathing heavily as if it fed off the scent of fear. The growling intensified, a chorus of voices echoing my dread. With no other choice, I grabbed the dog and sprinted toward the edge of the clearing, heart pounding, adrenaline surging. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. What were they? Why were they here? Then, as I reached the edge of the clearing, I felt the ground shift beneath me again. The altar trembled, and I glanced back one last time before breaking into a full run. I had no idea where this path would lead me, but standing still was no longer an option. The growls echoed in my ears, relentless as I plunged back into the trees. Whatever waited behind with those dark silhouettes was now on my trail, and I needed to find a way out before the forest claimed me for its own. The forest was a blur as I ran, dodging the grasping fingers of branches and tangled underbrush. My heart thundered in my chest, each beat a reminder of how close I was to something far more sinister than the wild I had come to explore. The growling echoed behind me, relentless and menacing, pushing me to move faster, faster until my lungs burned and my legs threatened to buckle beneath me. I had no idea how much time passed as I sprinted through the overgrown path. There was only the instinct to survive, to escape whatever darkness I had stumbled upon. The shadows whispered and laughed, taunting me. "Come find me," they seemed to echo, reminding me of the thin veil between reality and whatever waited just beyond the trees. Then, just as despair began to rise in my throat, I burst into a small clearing. Relief washed over me as I skidded to a halt. The sudden quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos I'd just fled. But then the silence became oppressive, the kind that made my skin prickle. I could feel the presence lurking, waiting to pounce. I turned slowly, taking in my surroundings. The clearing was surrounded by towering trees, their branches twisting like skeletal fingers, casting long shadows across the clearing's center. And at its heart, an old wooden signpost, weathered and worn, the letters faded and illegible. Bones lay scattered around its base, unmarked and twisted, a grim reminder of those who had come before me. The sight sent a shiver down my spine, a gruesome reminder that I was not the first to encounter this place or whatever lingered here. Suddenly, a dog barked. A sharp, urgent sound that pulled me from my thoughts. I spun around, my heart racing again, and to my utter astonishment it was the same scruffy, gaunt dog from earlier. It appeared like a savior, as though it had tracked me through the chaos, its eyes glistening with a determination that cut through the dark tension. "Hey there, buddy," I gasped, relieved to see a familiar face. The dog approached cautiously, sensing the fraught energy lingering in the air. As it neared me, the growling returned, louder and more omnipresent, reverberating through the ground beneath my feet. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught movement. The shadows shifted along the tree line, and they were more than just silhouettes now. They were solid figures, and they were closing in. My heart dropped. They had found me again. "Go! Run!" I urged the dog, but it stood its ground as if waiting for me to decide. I could see the tension coiled in its muscles, and for a moment, I wondered if it truly understood the danger, if it could sense the impending doom creeping closer. I turned, scanning the clearing for any possible escape. The growling grew louder, no longer just a distant echo, but an eager, ravenous invitation, an appetite for fear. I had to act fast. My eyes darted back to the wooden signpost, a sudden thought striking me. The faded letters could hold meaning, could point the way to safety or perhaps deeper into danger. "Please, hold on," I said to the dog as I sprinted toward the signpost. I reached for it, brushing my fingers along the rough wood, the chill of the air wrapping around me like a vice. The closer I drew, the more the whispers intensified, a cacophony of voices drowning out everything else. A loud crack split the air behind me, followed by a heavy thud. I dared a glance back and my blood ran cold. From the shadows, a figure emerged, massive and grotesque, rushing toward me with terrifying speed. Its elongated limbs stretched like dark branches, embodying everything frightening in the woods. I turned and grabbed the post, willing it to offer answers to guide me. but all I found was a fragmented path carved into the earth. A feeling coursed through me, a warm pull, as if the forest was trying to direct my movements. Follow it, I sensed somehow. "Let's go," I yelled to the dog and launched myself forward, trusting my instincts. The growling intensified, morphing into a guttural snarl that rattled my bones. But this time, I wasn't paralyzed by the looming dread. I followed the path winding through the trees, the dog close behind racing away from the growls and the darkness closing in. The trees seemed to part before us, the light ahead growing brighter, revealing new passages in the midst of the feral shadows. It felt almost like the forest was opening up, leading me to safety or luring me further into its depths. I stumbled across the final stretch, and that whisper echoed again, loud and clear. "Come find me." It was urgent now, a promise tainted with desperation. And yet, behind it, the shadows thrummed with life, a reminder of the dangers that lingered just a breath away. I dashed into the clearing beyond, heart pounding, but froze at the sight before me. A tranquil glade stretched out beneath a brightening sky, the glow of dawn filtering through the trees. But my heart dropped. It felt too serene, too perfect. Had I evaded them only to slip into a different grasp? The dog barked once more, pulling me from my disquiet. It seemed to urge me to keep moving, and I nodded, unable to shake the feeling of being watched. We edged toward the edge of the clearing, eyes scanning the periphery when I noticed a glimmer on the ground. Half buried under a patch of moss was a small locket, detailed and ornate. Panic gripped me and I froze once more. The locket resembled the one I had found earlier, its weight a reminder of the burden that had led me here. It tugged at me like the whispers, that beckoning call. "Leave it be," I whispered to myself, a futile attempt to resist its allure. But the dog moved closer, sniffing around it, eyes wide with curiosity and concern. I reached down, my fingers brushing the cool metal, and everything exploded into chaos. The forest roared as if awakened from a slumber, the ground trembling violently beneath me. Shadows clawed at the edges of my vision, the darkness erupting around us, taking shape, more figures twisting into form than I could count. "Please, no," I gasped, my hands shaking as I dropped the locket. The sound of it hitting the ground echoed painfully, reverberating through the clearing. I turned and bolted, the dog hot on my heels, as the growls transformed into savage howls, chasing us through the narrowing gaps between the trees. Every instinct screamed at me to press forward, to escape whatever fate awaited me, even as the whispers clawed at my mind, echoing, "Come find me." But now, racing toward what felt like a final truth, or a monumental question, it transformed from a promise to a warning. And as I broke through the barrier of trees, plunging into a new part of the woods, I understood. Some mysteries were never meant to be uncovered. Yet still I couldn't shake the encroaching shadows behind me, or the haunting echo of the voice that followed me into the light. I pressed on, uncertainty clouding every step, wondering if I would ever know the full truth of those woods. Would I always be searching, lost in a chase that never seemed to end? Did the forest claim its own? Or was it still waiting for me to come and find it? Whatever it truly was,